Pesachim Daf Nun Test. Today's email comes from Osher Hamel from Manchester. He says, firstly, I'll let you know that I've been, Baruch Hashem, addicted to your daf yomi, and it's changed my lifestyle unbelievably. Hashem should bless you that you go from strength to strength and maybe matzliach to have many more talmidim joining your daf. And then he goes on and he says, with Torah greetings, Osher Hamel from Manchester. Thank you, Osher. The Gemara brings two brises that give us the exact order of the final karbanos of the day. But the brises have a little bit of a difference between them. The first brisa says that the final carbon of the day typically is a carbon tamid, unless it's Erev Pesach, and the carbon Pesach always goes after the carbon tamid. But on a regular day, the k'tairis of the evening goes after the Pesach, and the neiros go after the k'tairis. Tamid, Pesach, k'tairis, neiros. Why is carbon Pesach after tamid? Because the pasuk says by Pesach, a double lashon, ba'erev, ben arbaim, whereas by the carbon tamid it only says ba'erev. But if that's the case, that's the Gemara, and that's basically what the second brayse is going to say. Neiros also only says ba'erev once. The Gemara says, you know what you learn from these words, ba'erev? You learn me'erev ad boiker by neiros, that the kohen has to provide enough oil to last the entire night, me'erev ad boiker, and that is a chatzilug, a half a lug. The word oisai teaches us that it's only neiros that go from erev ad boiker, and k'tairis, which is in the same pasuk as neiros. There's a hekesh between the two, and therefore they go together, and k'tairis is actually before neiros. The second brayse says no, like we said. The order is tamid, then k'tairis, then neiros, and then carbon pesach. The question is, what do we do with the word oisai according to this brayse? The answer is, it teaches us that k'tairis and neiros, since they're both done inside the heichal, they go together, whereas carbon pesach, which is done in the azara, is different. K'tairis of the morning always goes before the carbon tamid of the morning. Why? Because by k'tairis it says the lashon, double lashon, ba-boiker, and by tamid only says boiker once. The Gemara tells us there's another exception to the rule. There's another carbon that comes after a carbon pesach, and that is a mechusik kippur. Suppose a person was a mitzayra, and he wants to be finished with his mitzayra. He has to bring three karbanas: a chatos, an oila, and an asham. Let's say Erev Pesach, he brought his carbon Pesach, and then he remembered that he didn't bring his carbon. He went to the mikveh yesterday, he had Erev Shemesh, and now he has to bring his carbon, and he didn't bring the carbon. And he cannot eat his carbon Pesach without bringing the carbon because he's still tummy. Not eating a carbon Pesach is kares. That overrides the mitzvah of having the carbon Pesach last in the day. And you could, in fact, bring your carbon mitzvah that day. On a regular day, you cannot, according to the Tanakhama, eat your shlamim that you brought before the carbon tamid, because that is a say against an assay. According to Rabbi Shmuel ben Yosef, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika, we're talking about chatas ha'if. Chatas ha'if, the halach is you don't put the actual bird on the mizbeach. What you do is you sprinkle the blood from the bird, and then you toss the bird. There's a special place you put the bird, but you're not makriv the bird, and therefore it's not as if you did an avodah, you makriv a carbon after the tamid, so it's okay. According to Rav Papa, we could be talking about a full-fledged animal. And there's a trick. You don't have to be makriv it, but if you're not makriv it, it's going to be lina, it's going to be overnight. And that's Issa Deraisa. What you do is you take the animal, you put it on the mizbeach, but not in the fire. It lays on the mizbeach. So it's not lina, but you weren't makriv it after the carbon tamid. We have to say that the Mitzvah who has to bring three karbanas, he already brought his asham, because it's makiv, and he already brought his oila, it's also makiv, and now he's left with the chatas, and the chatas doesn't go on the mizbeach. The problem is, the chatas always goes before an oila. Says the Gemara, besides in this case, there's a special miyut that an oila could also go before a chatas. We have to also say that if you cannot physically put the imurim on the mizbeach, like in our case, the kohen can't put the chaylev on the mizbeach, it's as if that chaylev and the imurim that go on the mizbeach became tamei or got lost. What does that mean? We have a catch-22 here. If the imurim don't go on the mizbeach, the kohen cannot eat his gifts, his chazav shaykh, his breast and thigh, he can't eat. And if he can't eat, we have halacha. The Yisrael who brought the carbon gets his karpara through the kohen eating his gifts. If the kohen can't eat the gift, the Yisrael doesn't get the kapara. If the Yisrael doesn't get the kapara, he cannot eat the carbon pesach. So we have to say that the imurim that didn't go on the mizbech, it's as if they got lost. And if they got lost, you don't have to put it on the mizbech. So then the kohen doesn't have to eat his gifts, and the Yisrael gets the kapara without the kohen eating his gifts, and then he could eat the carbon pesach. The Gemara says two diukim. One diuk is you can die from the pasuk that the imurim that go on the mizbech from the carbon chagiga, you could put on the mizbech all night long. Question: How can you put it all night long? Doesn't it have to come before the carbon tamid? We said the carbon tamid is the last thing. Says Gemara, yeah. You know what happened? The zrika of this chagiga happened before the carbon tamid. That's all that we need. When you put on the imurim, that's a different story. We had a zrika of a chagiga, then the carbon tamid. That was the final carbon of the day. The Gemara asks an amazing question. When it comes to carbon pesach, it seems like from the pasuk they should put the imurim of the carbon pesach on the mizbeach. When? At night. When's the night? Leila Seder. Leila Seder is Yantif. Guess what? It's usher to take something, imurim, from a carbon that the shechita was during the weekday on a Friday, or erev Yantif, and put it on the mizbeach on Shabbos or on Yantif. It's usher. So how do we put the imurim of the carbon pesach on the mizbeach? And the Gemara says something amazing. That pasuk is talking about it. The Gemara calls it a tchak. It's a doicha. That pasuk is talking about in one particular case, that erev Pesach fell out on Shabbos, like in this year. In that case, since it's Shabbos, I could put it on the mizbeach on the Leil HaSeder on Yantif, because the Shabbos carbon has kedusha like Yantif, and it could go on. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.